Hey everyone, so today I wanted to spend a little bit of time talking through my process in the morning as I am preparing for the day. So as you all know, or a lot of you know, I have a checklist for every morning because I want to make sure that I'm providing the right information to you all on a consistent basis in my Discord group as well as in other communities that I am a part of. So of course in here we have kind of the generic things, GM, IBKR, refresh, PNL, open and closed entry for the start of the day, but as well as for the end of the day. By the way, start of the day is in green and end of the day is in blue. We also have the option levels, economic calendar, earnings, Trump schedule, plan for the day. And I like to do plan for the day before I look at any type of mentor content. I do have several mentors I'm working with consistently, but what I want to do is make sure that I'm coming up with my own ideas before I actually check out what my mentors are thinking. And that allows me to become better without necessarily relying on the information that my mentor is going to be providing, but also it allows me to validate my thinking against that of my mentors. And sometimes we agree, sometimes we disagree, but it's sort of, as a trader, it allows you to move forward in a consistent way while learning at the same time something new every single day. So at the end of the day, I do a trading journal update, P&L close entry, and of course, find some daily setups if I do want to scalp in the next day. So let's start out with going through some of these motions. I already completed GMs, IBKR refresh, P&L open and close, so open entry to see what happened overnight, and because I was traveling for work over the last week, essentially that got updated somewhat. So why don't we start out with option levels? And option levels, I essentially have this gamma level table in here in the spreadsheet, and this is where I am essentially updating the information on the monthly basis. I add the monthly move. On the quarterly basis, I add the quarterly move, and on a weekly basis, I add the weekly move. Every single day, I am updating pretty much the core in here. But today, because it is the beginning of the week, we are going to be taking a look at all of the different moves for QQQ, SPY, GLD, and IBIT. So those are the most commonly traded assets that I know that guys in my community trade, so I provide that information for them. So to get all of this information, I go to bar chart, and bar chart essentially is one of the, let's say, data providers out there. So they do a little bit of analysis, but what we want to do is take a look at the option data as we are navigating this environment and then figure out what do we actually need in here. So it's barchart.com. I have a premium subscription in here. And what we are going to do is we essentially are going to go start. So let's start with QQQ. So the expected move in here for today, for tomorrow, because today is a holiday in the US, is going to be right here, and that is going to be the upper price 72403. We essentially enter it here, and the lower price is going to be 71105. So very simple procedure. So looking into the weekly as well, because it is the start of the week, why don't we take a look into that? So it's asking me the best of bar charts, get alerts. Don't care about alerts. I know how to think. So anyways, so the 29th is going to be the end of the week. So you can click right here to highlight it so it's a little bit easier to transfer over. And for the upper weekly, we are going to put 729.74. And then for the lower weekly, we are going to be putting 705.34. So that gives you the upper move and the lower move. Then we also have Gibbo, who is one of the traders I know, and he loves max pain for some reason. So we are going to give him the max pain. So on the left side, we essentially go to max pain, and we just transfer from the expected move to max pain, and we are going to fill this number up right here. Next up, we have the gamma levels, which are super important. So gamma is essentially the line where the dealer has to switch how they are positioning within the market. And above the gamma trend line, you essentially have buy the rib and or sell the rib, buy the dip. And below it, you have sell into selling and buy into buying. So below it, you have a lot more volatility, and above it, typically on the larger time frames, you see that the stocks are now continuing to go higher. So that, of course, gives you different strategies, but each one of these levels, put wall, call wall, gamma level, act as support and resistance from the mechanical standpoint, because there's an aggregation of orders, and if the price gets there, then those orders start getting executed. So from that standpoint, we go into gamma exposure right here, and this is why I call them the gamma levels, is because of the gamma exposure, and we'll look into where we are. So this is a current price. The red line in here, it says gamma flip, so that's your gamma flip line, and we are going to update in here 706 for free. And then for the call wall and put wall, you can of course click in here and identify them on the chart. But what I like to do instead, and that's been quite successful from my trading strategy, is essentially looking at the price and then seeing where the spikes are. So to me, 720 is going to be the call wall, and it also coincides in here with what this app is suggesting. So we are going to put 720 for the top of the wall, and then for the put wall, we are going to be looking at 715. Instead of what is suggested right here. So they're looking all the way in here at 700, but what we're seeing is that Just below, we have 715 spike, we have another spike in the opposite direction at 710, and we have another spike at 700. So all of those levels are going to be important. You can map all of them out, but usually the price is not going to go too far out unless there's a super crazy volatile event. So let's say that we're looking at 715, and that is going to be our put wall, essentially. So that fills out the table for QQQ. And what we do now as the next step is we are going into SPY. And what I did is very simple. I just typed SPY right here and then hit enter. But of course you can go and switch over from in a different way. So right now we are back in the gamma exposure. We essentially stayed on the same screen. So what I do is I don't like flipping between screens. So I just continue going from here, 738.07. This is our gamma line right here. So for the call wall is definitely right here, 750. So that's pretty high in comparison to where the price is. And then where is our put wall? Put wall is right below 745. So you can see right away, looking at these walls, is that there's quite a bit of support for the price. The current price is at 745, and right below it you have support. So even if the price goes down initially, it is very likely that it is going to bounce from this level and continue going higher. So, or at least go and retest it and attempt a few bounces to break through this put wall that exists in here. So let's go now into expected moves and take a look at upper daily expected move and lower daily expected move for tomorrow. Now, once again, the market is closed today, so I'm taking the opportunity to actually explain some of the stuff to y'all. And then we have 740.85, just grabbed it from right here on the bottom. You have about other calculations in here. The expected move about $479, about 0.64%. And all of this information can be quite interesting, and you can dig deeper into it. But right now, for the purposes of this exercise, we're just looking into the levels. So 529 is the next one. So in here, for the upper weekly expected move, we put 754.15. 754.15, and then for a lower weekly, yes, you guessed it, it is going to be 73715. 73715. Relatively simple. GLD, so let's go to GLD. This is gold. We go into expected moves. Once again, for the day, we have 419046. And for this one, we have 408.18. And once I have a little bit more time, I'll figure out how to automate it a little bit. So what you see in here is quite interesting because the date for expiration is for gold is usually Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So from that perspective, because Monday is a holiday, so we're looking at the Wednesday move, which all of these levels, they still stand pretty well, regardless of which day you're looking at. And then 529, that's going to be Friday, and that's going to be the weekly expected move. And in here, what we're looking at is 420.96, and on the bottom, 406.68. This is quite interesting because you notice that the daily move and the weekly move are not that different from each other, right? So that essentially is telling you that, yeah, the price is going to be moving, but it's very unlikely that it is going to be expanding. It's probably going to be ranging somewhat within the week. Next, we go into gamma exposure. Update it, and notice that Max Payne only picked it up for Givo for QQQ because that's what he trades, but otherwise I probably wouldn't be even looking at it at all. It's quite useful to cross-check on OPEX days, but otherwise less important. Okay, gamma flip line 41108. Now let's take a look. We have a call wall at 415. And let's see where the put wall. Put wall is actually pretty far down, so it's all the way at 400. So that's quite interesting, right? Because when I see something like this, the question becomes for me, it's like, oh, okay, like there's quite a few put walls up here, so the price is going to have difficulty passing through. But then for the bottom, it's like it can just like go and melt down all the way to 400 and have no problem at all. So the path of least resistance is somewhat lower in here. Okay, finally we look into IBIT, and that is the Bitcoin index gamma flip line at 42.96. In here, usually you have to squint a little bit to actually identify the walls, and you can, oh, actually that wasn't even the call wall, so the call wall is right here, 4317. So Bitcoin right now is below the gamma flip line, which means that if the dealer has to operate into buying and then selling into selling. So if we go lower and you see the move going lower, then you short because the selling is likely to continue. And if we're going higher, then you go long because the long is going to be continuing. So this is where the mean reversion works very well, especially from my system perspective. On the larger time frame, it's going to be like a volatile chop, and the smaller time frame, it's going to be trends going up and down. So because I operate usually on larger time frame, I think of it as mean reversion. But on a smaller time frame, of course, that's essentially you can catch very, very nice moves, especially if you're trading NASDAQ or something like that. Like we're talking about 100, 150 point moves every single day, which is quite amazing. Okay, so right here, 42.96, you see the support at around 42, so that's going to be your put wall, and then on your call wall side, that's probably going to be maybe around here, first kind of area. But if I'm looking here, it doesn't look super substantial, so maybe I'll put it 45. So you have to make a little bit of that judgment call around how you want to navigate in here, but that is going to be important. Okay, so we got QQ, we got SPY, we got GLD, and we've got IBIT. So the second part is, of course, looking into the futures, because these numbers have been updated automatically, but the price has changed overnight. So now what we're looking at is making sure that we're updating all of these numbers. So let's start backwards from Bitcoin because it's relatively easy. So I go into btcetfcalc.com. And then once you scroll all the way down to this particular table, you're able to identify this calculation, and that is implied BTC from IBIT. It gives you all of the numbers that you need. So the base in here is in IBIT, and that's going to be 42.96. And at the top, you have the Bitcoin price, 75646. So that gives calculation automatically translates into BTC USD. That's how I set up these tables. The next one is going to be GLD. GLD is a little bit difficult to get. So what I normally do is I go into the charts and I have one of the indicators in here. That's GLD GC calculation right here. And at the top right, you have the numbers that are explaining where we are at. So it's 41385, 413.85. And then at the top level, you have 4567. 4567. So that's completed the calculation for it. Then I unclick it because I don't care about it at this point, and then I exit, well, not exit, but collapse the window. Next, we have the calculation for these two, so QQQ and SPY. We'll start with QQQ. In here, the number is essentially this gamma flip line. It just gets copied automatically. So we need to find the NQ number. So what we do is we enter 706.43. So that is the gamma flip line. It goes here. You hit convert. And that is going to give you 29092.93. So that creates a conversion. It's about 41 ratio, and it gives you all of the levels for NASDAQ or micro, mini, NASDAQ, MNQ. I just don't even know which it is. I just know it's a small type of basket. And then we do the same thing for ES. 738.07, hit convert. And you have the number in here, 7417.07. So next up, essentially what I do is I take a screenshot of all of this, and then I share it to my communities. So of course I am going to go and share it to the Carific community with a nice GM, and then say option levels. And then I am going to also share it with other communities as well. So another piece that I do is also, so we completed the option levels, and that is important, so I check that through. Next, we're looking into the economic calendar, and in here, what we're using is the forexfactory.com calendar view, and then we specified the week that is at the top, apply settings. For the filters, what I use, Canadian, China, and USD. That's all I care about. And I'm looking at all of the events in all of the different folders. So then I take a look at what is going on within the week. And we don't have too much, but I do take a screenshot and once again share it with the community. Say, no economic events. Good. Looked into that. Next up, earnings. So for the earnings week, we are looking at the earnings hub. And so we go, it's earningshub.com, earnings calendar, week off. And we specify the week once again. I think that's a wrong week, so we have to go to 25. You can see all of the major earnings. There are more earnings, of course, that are going to be going on throughout the week. But we do take the major earnings and we take a screenshot and share it with the group. So very simple, gives you visibility into how things are happening. And finally, we have the orange folder that is walking around the world, known as Donald J. Trump, and he says stuff all the time. You can't quite predict it, but at least you can see a few things that he's doing during the day and then see if that actually matters for the market in some way, shape, or form. So we essentially are looking into the key economic events from that standpoint as well and sharing it back with the community. So all of this information is coming out every single day from Monday to Friday, and the option levels especially are useful because this is what my COGS system is completely based out of. So from that standpoint, after that, I will go and check out some ideas to make a plan for the day. But these are kind of the economic indicators, the data that I'm using as to get a start with my analysis. Anyways, I hope this was helpful. And if you have any questions, definitely let me know. Cheers, you guys.